I'm Courtney Fallon, and welcome again to The Game Plan on Reach TV, your insider guide to this week's key NFL action. In The Game Plan, I tap into the Believe Podcast Network to bring you the most important information you need to know to stay in the loop. It is the calm before the storm at The Game Plan as free agency shifts to the draft. To go over some of the latest news dropping this week, let's hear from Erin Coscarelli from the Believe in Rams podcast. Erin, welcome to the show. Are you ready to play an extended version of 3-0?
Yes, thank you for having me, Courtney. It's so good to see you.
All right, so we're gonna run down some questions. You know, usually it's 3 and out, first down, second down, but scratch that. We're gonna go extended on here. So we're just gonna go first up. And the first question for you is Stefan Diggs and the Texans have agreed to void the last 3 years of his current contract, basically making him a free agent in 2025. Was this a smart move by the Texans, or is this a massive mistake?
I mean, great question. I think, first of all, players want to win. And on top of that, they want to feel content with the team they're playing for. So if Stefan Diggs produces, which this is an opportunity for him to show and prove himself, the Texans anticipate, why not pay the guy to keep him on your roster? And not to mention, you know, Tim Graham of The Athletic reported that there was some tension between Diggs and Allen last season. I want to say it was like week 1, something happened. And then after that, you know, you saw Diggs' production take a dip in the second half of the season. But my opinion is I don't think it's a mistake. I think if Diggs shows and proves he is producing and he's happy in Houston, why not pay the guy? I think it was smart for all parties involved. And if this means this is a prove-it year for Stefan, he shows up, he gets it done, pay the guy.
Yeah, for sure. And that connection that he's going to have with CJ Stroud, that just screams firepower. I'm kind of partial to Stefan Diggs because he went to the University of Maryland. So did I. All right, moving on. Panthers defensive tackle Derek Brown signed a $96 million extension in Carolina. Over the last year, we have seen a lot of defensive tackles sign huge contracts, players such as Chris Jones, Christian Wilkins, and Quinnen Williams. So why are we seeing a trend on increasing spending on the defensive tackle market?
But I mean, what do all those guys have in common? If you have the ability to make plays like Derek Brown or even Aaron Donald, who we see routinely get double, triple teams, and now you have that guy on your roster for, 4 years, who you know will deliver and deliver consistently, which is rare. I mean, he's basically like 2 players in one with all the double teaming he's getting, right?
Yeah.
I think owners are seeing the value add in a player like that, in a position like that, and the net benefit consequently goes directly to the team and the team's ability to win on game day. So, in my opinion, we're seeing owners pay the players, lock them up, and lock them up long term.
A lot of linebackers, they just can't seem to tackle in space. So you shove that big body, that big defensive tackle in the front of the line. That's how you get it done. Make an impact on the game. All right, moving on. Which team, in your opinion, has had the most impressive free agency so far, Erin?
In my opinion, certainly, I think one of the splashiest free agent moves thus far, the Eagles with Saquon Barkley. A lot of upset, angry Giants fans.
Yep.
But I mean, I think it was really smart for the Eagles and for Saquon, no doubt. Of course, look, he's familiar in that division. He goes to a better offensive line, a better quarterback. The Eagles also picked up Kenny Pickett. And the signing that I loved the most for Philadelphia is defensive coordinator Vic Fangio. I mean, The guy is a legend in the business. And his success in Miami, certainly in my opinion, lends to the system in Philly. So I think as a whole, I would say if the Eagles are looking to continue to win that division, they've done a very good job at attempting to stay number 1 in that division.
Miami's loss, Philadelphia's gain for Vic Fangio. Could not agree more with that. Well, of course, you cover the LA Rams. You're just our West Coast gal. You know about the 49ers, but you cover the Rams. So let's pivot over to LA. Where do you see the Rams going with that number 19 overall pick in the draft? Could you kind of give me some insight into what you're hearing, what you're thinking?
So this is going to be the Rams' first round pick since Jared Goff back in 2016. So that's a really long time. The fan base has not seen the Rams have a first round pick in a very long time. And of course, the big void in Aaron Donald, despite some needs at maybe wide receiver, some secondary issues. Look, this team is very much a playoff contender, which is what we saw last year. And if in fact they stick and pick at number 19, and there's a great, let's say, edge rusher available, it's kind of hard not to see them opt and go in that direction to strengthen the defensive line, being that there's a huge void in number 99 retiring.
Well, you took the last question that I had right out of my mouth. What do they do to replace Aaron Donald? However, I have a backup. Listen, I always keep a handy one in my pocket. Is this a make or break season for Sean McVay? Our final question on 3 and Out.
I think a lot of people wonder that with Sean McVay. He's so elusive, and wasn't that long ago there was talk of him maybe even just retiring and leaving the team. But I mean, come on. Absolutely no way. I feel like this guy has shown time in and time out he's earned a lot of runway. Mm-hmm. The 10-7 campaign last season, and now this year trying to compensate without an Aaron Donald.
Yeah.
So I think McVay has shown, and I'm not using the Aaron Donald isn't there anymore as an excuse, but it certainly lends itself that this is not going to be an easy feat to figure out. However, I will say this will not be a make or break season for Sean McVay.
Erin Coscarelli, thank you so much for joining us on The Game Plan. We hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Courtney.
After a strong showing at the Senior Bowl and the Combine, Spencer Rattler started to jump up the boards in most mock drafts. So to find out what attributes Rattler has been impressing scouts with, let's hear from Matt and Phil Simms from the Simms Complete podcast. Guys, what should we know about this budding quarterback?
He's 6 foot, 211 pounds, and he is a guy that has a ton of experience, has played a lot of football, has gotten a lot of snaps. And he's finished his last 2 years at South Carolina. And, I think he's an interesting prospect here coming out this year. Just for your first initial thoughts here, Big Phil, on Spencer Rattler as a football player.
Well, you said it. Played at Oklahoma, had good success. I think when they were playing Texas is when they brought in Caleb Williams. And that was kind of the end of the story for Spencer Rattler out there. But at South Carolina, he was running the pro offense. The offensive coordinator down there at South Carolina is Dal Loggins, and so I like what they did. Yeah. First off, I think he's got a chance, Spencer Rattler, to make a roster for sure. We're talking about anywhere from 4th round on, and sometimes you can go in the 6th and 7th round. You're better than that, but it's just the way the NFL, the draft falls, and quarterback situations will determine. It could be 4th round or 7th round, could be the same player. But I'll just say this. His arm is good. I call it, I'm being kind and saying it's NFL average. Right. Everybody, he's top 10. Well, no, it's NFL average. He's not, mobility is, I would say, okay. NFL average again at best. He will run with the football in key situations. I think he really understands what to do as a quarterback, but his elite trait is the fact that you already said it. He's got experience, he made good decisions, and he understands running with the football as a quarterback, especially on 3rd down is what I noticed. If he sees man-to-man coverage, if he didn't like it right away, and if there was a space open in front of him, he would take off. Those are a few things that came out pretty easy for me just watching them on film and watching their football game.
All right, so Big Phil has Rattler going between the 4th and the 7th rounds, and I have to agree because he lacks the elite size and strength of a top 5 prospect, but he does have a lot of game experience, and he's a very crafty quarterback. I cannot wait to see where Spencer Rattler gets drafted. The Packers saw their belief in Jordan Love pay off big time in 2023 as they fought their way into the playoffs. Sure, they had a tough loss to the 49ers, but they showed the league that they have the tools to challenge the big boys in 2024. To find out what the Packers need to do in this year's draft, let's hear from Mike Wahle from the Block Party podcast. Mike, what can we expect Green Bay to do in the draft?
Thanks, Courtney. Let's start on offense, where the Packers did lose arguably their two best players on offense, David Bakhtiari and Aaron Jones this offseason. But with the emergence of Jordan Love and this young receiving and tight end core, there's really only two glaring areas of need in the offensive side of the football. The first is up front along the offensive line. We have two starters in Elgton Jenkins and Zach Tom, but really we could use at minimum competition from this draft at left tackle, center, and right guard, where Sean Ryan is trying to make his first trip around the sun as a bona fide day one starter in the National Football League. Now, as a former offensive lineman, I'd love to see a tone setter, somebody that bring in and set the edge on Sundays, be drafted early to develop this offensive line room. In the running back room, we re-signed A.J. Dillon, but you'd love to see them bring a change of pace back to go with new free agent Josh Jacobs, something the Detroit Lions did last year with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. On the defensive side of the football, we bring in Xavier McKinney, huge splash pickup from the Giants, but we don't know who his running mate is. We don't know the status of Eric Stokes, how he's going to come back from injury. Is he going to develop into the cornerback we need? A lot of questions and holes to fill there, along with Jair Alexander being the star in that room. We have Isaiah McDuffie, Quay Walker penciled in at linebacker. I would love to see them bring in a thumper. I'm going to do a Block Party podcast on this later on today about who could help Quay Walker kind of unlock his potential as a more rangy, athletic Derek Brooks, kind of Jesse Armstead type of ball player. And then up front, Carl Brooks was great last year. Devontae White continues to improve. But in Jeff Hafley's defense, is there room for a bona fide nose tackle, run-stopping guy that we can pick on day 2 or day 3? Now, for the best Packers analysis and film breakdown, follow my show, Block Party with Mike Wahle, on YouTube. Find it on our Believe Network. Thanks for the time. Thank you, Courtney. Back to you.
Okay, Mike, thank you very much for that information. So, just to recap, on offense, the Packers should be focused on the offensive line and a change of pace with the running back. On the defensive side of the ball, they should key in on a thumper at linebacker. So why don't you go check out Mike Wahle's Block Party podcast on Believe for more information on what linebackers he would like to see in a Packers uniform next season. Well, the Browns shocked the NFL last year as they finished with an 11-6 record and secured a place in the postseason. Though they were led by a lights-out defense, there will be room to improve on the offensive side of the ball in 2024. Max Loeb and Eric Metcalf from the Dawg Check podcast say that the Browns should go with a wide receiver in the first round of the draft. Let's find out why.
The draft coming up, what do you think is the Browns' top position need right now? I don't know if running back is the top position need. I think we can kind of agree it's not there. But what do you think is the top position need?
I think receiver.
Ooh, okay. So do you think that's where they lean in the draft then?
I think receiver, explosive receiver. Like I said, when I mentioned it earlier, Amari, he's your guy right now. But he's 30 years old, right? And he's getting older. So I think we need somebody who's explosive, who can play and play well on a rookie contract, right? And go make plays. Because I think with this offense and what they want to do with bringing in Ken Dorsey, having Deshaun Watson, Njoku, Elijah, Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, I think we're thinking explosive plays. And that's what was exciting about the Browns last year, towards the end of the year. Explosive plays. We made explosive plays. And I think a lot of people want to see that because they know that's the type of team that we can be if you go get guys who are explosive. And so, in looking from that standpoint, I think an explosive receiver gives us more ability to stretch the field and give bigger running lanes for the running backs as well.
Listen, the Browns are stacked on the defensive side of the ball. So yes, an explosive wide receiver in the first round makes a whole lot of sense for this team. But who will it be is the big question. Notre Dame has been delivering pro ball level players for decades upon decades. At last count, get this, Notre Dame has had 562 players drafted into the NFL. Let me say that again. 562 players drafted. Yes, this year, Joe Alt is the name on everyone's lips. So to find out what makes this offensive lineman so special, let's hear from Corey Holmes, Devin Butler, and CJ Procise from the Lucky Underdogs podcast on Believe. Guys, what should we know about Joe Alt?
Thank you, Courtney. All right, fellas. Yo, we here to talk about Joe Wahle, tackle out of Notre Dame. That dude, he checked all the boxes. We talking about a dude 6'9", right? 6'9", 320 pounds. He can move. He athletic. I'm talking about literally just a mountain on the line of scrimmage. Now, Dev, you played cornerback. Yo, what is it like to see a guy this size and stature pulling and you the corner out there on the island seeing that?
Man, luckily I didn't have to see too much of that because guys that size, very small amount, guys coming through this. Got that size, that mobility, and can really do all the things out on the edge and in the interior like Joe. Man, it's going to be crazy to see what that kid does at the next level. I know we've seen some great tackles coming out of ND. What you think, CJ? How does Notre Dame compare and prepare some of the guys for the pros?
Man, listen, like you said, we got a long list of tackles, not even tackles, just offensive linemen in the league right now. And I mean, that just goes to show you what how Notre Dame prepares them for the league. I mean, we got guys the last 10 years basically going top 5, top 10, first, second rounders, guys playing 10 years, getting big contracts. I mean, Zach Martin is still, he's been playing for almost 12 years at this point. He's one of the best in the league. So that's how Notre Dame prepares them. They're the best. That's how they're always going to be the best. So they're going to keep putting them in there.
Yo, Notre Dame certainly got another one. We ready to see him playing on Saturdays. Back to you, Courtney.
All right, you had me at 6'9", 320 pounds at offensive line. Listen, Joe Wahle is one of a long list of highly talented O-Linemen to come out of the Notre Dame system. They rarely miss in the NFL, so let's see where he goes in the draft. Okay, it is time to play Pick 6 on the game plan, and this week we're having a little bit of fun, just a little bit. We will be discussing the top 6 NFL stadiums to host NHL games with hockey expert Jonny Lazarus from the Blue Crew podcast. Jonny, welcome to the game plan. Are you ready to play Pick 6?
It's an honor to be here, but I'm not going to lie, I'm not ready because I'm a bit of a fraud. I don't really know much about football, so we'll see how it goes here.
Let's just get right into it. You covered the stadium series at MetLife Stadium earlier this year with the Rangers and the Islanders. How was that stadium? How was the environment, especially being with 2 New York hockey teams?
It was such an incredible overall weekend for all 4 fan bases, and I think it's something that the NHL should even consider doing yearly when you have, the Philly market, the New Jersey market, and both New York teams. It just brings out a little bit more passion and a little bit more hate between all 4 of those teams. There's obviously a lot of rivalries built in, but the games themselves, Saturday night was New Jersey's night, and then obviously Sunday's game, the Rangers come back in the last 5 minutes down 2 goals and win it in overtime, and it was the loudest, Rangers goal chant I've ever heard. Sometimes I think stadiums have a little bit more of a personality, even if they're not as pretty, and I think MetLife can be considered one of those, but that game was one of the best games I've ever been to, for sure.
Let's talk about a stadium that would be indoors. Like Ford Field, Detroit Red Wings fans are crazy, and they were even chanting Jared Goff's name during hockey games last fall when the Lions were in the playoffs. Why would that be a dream scenario?
I just think that environment, we saw it in the playoff games. Ford Field was, an electric factory for those games. And I think if you get a Red Wings game there, we saw it happen in the Big House, about a decade ago when the Toronto Maple Leafs played the Red Wings outdoors. And I think if you get it at Ford Field, it's just all credit to the fans, right? That's what makes these events so special. But with the Red Wings being an original 6 team and having stars like Patrick Kane, Dylan Larkin, it just adds to the overall spectacle.
The House of Hero Worship. Lambeau Field in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Could you pick 2 NHL teams that you would love to see play in that legendary stadium?
Well, that makes this one a little more complicated because obviously there's no NHL team in Milwaukee, but I feel like with geography, Chicago, Minnesota would be a good one maybe. But I feel like Lambeau Field has this Fenway Park to it. It's like just an original classic of football stadiums, and I think that'd be really cool to bring into the NHL.
All right, for sure. What about moving over to the West Coast? Of course, you have the reigning Stanley Cup champions over there in Las Vegas, Allegiant Stadium.
That town is just unbelievable, and it's become such a great sports town that I think it's kind of inevitable at some point that the Golden Knights are going to get that game. So it's just a matter of time. But I've never been to Allegiant Stadium again. My dad's been there, though. He went to a Raiders-Chiefs game, and he raved about it as a, guy who's turning 60 years old. So I think that's just a city where everyone can come together, make it one big party, and have some good hockey as well.
What about SoFi Stadium out in LA? Might have to, gauge the weather a little bit, make sure it's not too rainy. But that would be a beautiful, beautiful situation, scenario, and bringing all of the hockey fans out there in LA with the Kings.
Well, that's my favorite NFL stadium, aesthetically, right? I think SoFi is just a beautiful, brand new stadium. The scoreboard is sick. And, the LA Kings are, one of the best teams in the NHL for the last decade. And I think, with guys like Kopitar, Drew Doughty, Adrian Kempe is, one of their newer talented players. Hockey in LA has become pretty popular. And I think SoFi Stadium, to me, just, aesthetically is the prettiest NFL stadium there is. And maybe people would disagree that have been there, but from my opinion.
I have a suggestion. What about Lumen Field in Seattle with the 12th man and the way that stadium is built, the acoustics, and having the brand new Seattle Kraken team in there?
I was gonna put that one, but Seattle just hosted the Winter Classic this year at T-Mobile, the baseball stadium, which I think they should have done at the football stadium. That would be a sick one because Seattle is definitely an underrated sports town. I mean, they really came out and supported the Kraken for that Winter Classic. It was cool to hear those echoes the day before at practices and stuff.
All right, bring back the Supersonics. You heard it right here. And possibly bring a hockey team to Atlanta. I like that idea. Jonny Lazarus, thank you so much for playing Pick Six on The Game Plan. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, that's all the time we have today on The Game Plan. Go check out the Believe Podcast Network for more in-depth analysis on every team in the league. And we'll see you next week as we continue to prepare for the NFL Draft.